Can I have your attention, please, and ask you to please take your seats? My name is Bob Harb. I'm the school district moderator. We're about to begin tonight's deliberative session. If everyone can sit down in their proper seats, non-voters in the non-voting area. So it's a few minutes after 7. I don't have my gavel, but I'll bang the podium. So I'll call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. So now that I ask you all to sit down, can I ask you all to please rise? Because we'd like to start the meeting tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then the Timberlane Regional School District Choir will lead us in the Star-Spangled Banner. So there's the flag. Please join with me in a pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you, choir. You may be seated. Next, I'd like to have a roll call. I'll ask those on the main podium, starting at my immediate left, to introduce themselves. When the front stage is done, then I'll ask the BudCom people. You have your mic there. You can pass that around. This is for the roll call. I'm Bob Harb. I'm the moderator. And
Kristen Lewis Savage, Vice Chair of the School Board from Plastow, New Hampshire.
Katie Knudsen, Plastow School Board Chair.
Jim O'Shaughnessy, Legal Counsel for the district.
Justin Krieger, Interim Superintendent for the district.
Maria Watkins, Business Administrator for the district.
Sandy Allaire, Acting Assistant Superintendent for the district.
Sue Sherman, Chairman of the Budget Committee, Plastow, New Hampshire.
Mark Sherwood, Sandown Rep.
Anna Manthorn, Plastow School Board. Kim McCormick, Danville Rep.
Don Woodworth, Atkinson Rep.
Jack Sapia, Atkinson Rep.
Brianna Woodworth, Danville Rep.
Liz Costa, Plastow Rep.
For Budget.
Michael Mascola, Plastow Rep.
Catherine Consalvo, Atkinson Rep.
Karen White, Sandown Budget Committee.
Julie Hammond, Atkinson Budget.
it's like collecting at church, I think.
Christy O'Clair, Danville. Sabrina Alberg, Danville.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your help. Thank you very much. I understand next that there will be a motion made to allow non-residents to speak or make presentations at this deliberative session. Do I have someone who would like to make that motion? Ms. Knudsen? I have the list. The list on the motion says Justin Krieger, interim superintendent, attorney Jim O'Shaughnessy, he's in the main district legal counsel, Louis Broad, TTA president, Ryan Richmond, TTA spokesperson, Carl Inglesby, director of plant operations. Is that your motion? And do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising your cards. Thank you. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. At some point, the screen will show the mission statement for the Timberlane School District. I've been asked to read that. The mission of the Timberlane Regional School District is to engage all students in challenging and relevant learning opportunities, emphasizing high aspirations and personal strength. You have met tonight the members of the school board and the BudCom, Budget Committee, who's here. All of us thank them for their efforts and dedication to their job and their commitment to the students and our children. Thank you. Next, I'd like to read the moderator rules. These are the same rules we've had for a number of years. Number one, no smoking. Please turn off your cell phones or put them on silent mode. Number two, each person will treat every other participant with courtesy and respect. Number three, any voter who wishes to address the meeting will approach the microphone. There's a number of microphones here in the front at the end of the aisle. There's one also here upstage. You will be recognized by the moderator. Please state your name and address and spell your last name. I've been asked to remind you twice. Please give your address because they have to put that in the record, name and address. And more than just Atkinson, Sandown, Danville. Give your street address for the clerk because she needs to keep a good record, and she does. General comments will be limited to 5 minutes maximum. 5, speakers will remain at the microphone if you're looking for an answer to your question. 6, all questions to the school board, budget committee, any other official, or someone here will be directed through me, the moderator. Each voter who decides to speak on an article will be given a chance to do so before any other voter is given a second opportunity to speak on the same issue. So you'll see sometimes you go to the end of the line so everybody else gets a chance to speak. 8, makers of motions and seconds, please state your name for the clerk. Those also by law must go in the record. 9, only one amendment will be allowed on the floor at any one time. No amendment to an amendment will be allowed. Such proposals will be dealt with as subsequent amendments after the first amendment has been voted on. Amendments must be in writing and signed by the voter along with their printed name. Also, those stay with the total record of the deliberative session, and the clerk keeps them. So they need your motion in writing. You need to present it to the stage and to me. I will read your motion, but we keep that. Number 11, challenges to any voice vote require 7 or more voters immediately after it is announced, who may then request a written ballot. The Municipal Budget Act, number 12, there is a 10% limit, which if we ever get to that, will be explained by our district attorney if needed. 13, reasonable discussions on both sides of a motion will be allowed before a call. The question will be accepted by me, the moderator. A 2/3 vote is required for a call of the question. 14, any amendments of financial amounts must be stated in dollars. I've already been told there will be some changes in numbers, so you need to state it in dollars, not percentages. You must convert any percentages to a dollar amount. 15, upon appeal of any ruling by myself, a majority of you, the voters, will prevail. 16, all votes will initially be by a voice vote. I'm changing that because we want to make sure that all of your hardworking clerks that are in the other room, supervisors of the checklist, that they also get the right to vote and have it counted. They have a gong in there, they told me. Where's my music people? And they wanted to know if they could bang the gong so we'd know that they're voting. But one of my assistant moderators is going to go out there. So like we just did, I'm going to ask you to show your cards. That way one of the assistant moderators will check their vote by their cards also. So if the cards we can't tell, then we will count those cards. And all my 3 assistant moderators will be counting. They all have a section of here and the supervisors of the checklist in order to count your cards. So leave your cards up until you're told to place them down so your vote will count. 17, Robert's Rules of Order is used only for a guide. 18, at any time during the meeting, these rules can be altered by you by a majority vote. If I don't hear any objections for these are our standard rules. Did somebody say something I couldn't hear? I guess not. Somebody in the hallway. Well, thank you very much. So those are the adopted rules. And now I'd like to move on to the warrant. It may be up there in a second. First session of the annual meeting, deliberative. You are hereby notified to meet at the Timberlane Performance Arts Center, 40 Greeno Road, Plastow, New Hampshire, on Thursday, the 8th day of February, 2024 at 7 p.m. This session will consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of warrant articles number 2 through 10. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. A, warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. B, warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote on the main motion as amended. And C, no warrant articles shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. There will be a second session of annual meeting, the voting. Voting on warrant articles 1 through number 10 will be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with town meeting voting to be held on Tuesday, the 12th day of March, 2024, at the town election polls in Atkinson, Danville, Plastow, and Sandown, New Hampshire. Atkinson voting will be conducted at the Atkinson Community Center from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Danville voting will be conducted at the Danville Community Center from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Plastow voting will be conducted at the Plastow Fish and Game Club from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sandown voting will be conducted at the Sandown Town Hall from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The first article on the warrant is the election of officials. That's non-amendable. All those that properly put their name in for nomination will be shown on Article 1. You can see that each of the towns, Atkinson, Plastow, Sandown, will be voting for BudCom and school board members. On to the articles that we're debating tonight and discussing. Article 2, the operating budget. Shall the voters of the school district raise and appropriate it as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $89,120,265. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $585,373, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Timberlane Regional School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral X, XVI, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note, Warrant 2, the operating budget, does not include appropriations proposed under other warrant articles. A majority vote is required. It's recommended by the school board, 9-0-0, and recommended by the budget committee, 7-2-0. I have a motion to place this on the ballot as written. Do I have a second? I have a motion made and seconded. Ms. Sherman, are you going to speak on this?
I'm happy to, Bob.
Thank you.
I want to begin by thanking the members of the Budget Committee for their hard work this year. They worked hard. We had some great discussions. They asked good questions. I'm really, really proud of this group of very congenial people. Every budget that was presented by an administration or a director or a department head was considered and reviewed fairly carefully. Great questions asked about it. And at the conclusion of all those presentations, which took a few meetings, as you can well imagine, the committee considered carefully and requested that the administration go back and find about $2 million that could be removed from the proposed budget. So the number that you're seeing there as the proposed total is a reflection of that hard and sometimes difficult decisions that the committee made to get the budget cut or a little lower this year. So I'll go on and read the slides, but again, thank you, committee. The budget process. It's developed in accordance with applicable New Hampshire statutes, RSAs 32, 33, and 195. Incorporation of the Budget Committee's mission statement. The Budget Committee will develop a fiscally sound annual budget that will optimally meet the needs of the district by working with district personnel and in consultation with the school board. Throughout the budget process, the Budget Committee will take into consideration the district taxpayer, as well as support for staff, rigor, evaluation, and accountability initiatives that drive student achievement. This kind of states again what I said, but here it is on the slide. The process requires that we actually review expenditures in the prior years. We looked at a lot of trending reports too. Consideration for staffing and enrollment projections, deliberation of the capital improvements requested within the capital improvement plan or the CIP. And we, of course, collaborate with each other, with administrators, with department heads, with teachers, and we listen to a lot of different voices. Here's the budget overview. Here's the 23-24 voted budget, $87,046,915. 24-25 proposed budget, $89,370,265. The net change is $2,323,350, and as a percent, that's a 2.7% change. Some drivers. This is a high level a look at the requests. We looked at it much more in detail, but I wanted you to see what drove these requests. Salaries and benefits, $1,226,202. Special education, $545,100. Equipment, $176,000. Professional services, $155,147. Food service, $134,497. Info access fees, $109,405. Maintenance and repairs, $70,000. Supplies, $30,000. And utilities, we have a decrease there of $123,000.
Thank you, Susan. I understand that Mr. Krieger would like to also make a presentation and continue with the same.
I would. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just 7 slides. Wanted to show the public a little bit of history about where we've been, currently where we are, and a couple of slides that will project out to where we may be. The first is just simply looking at the cost per pupil. Historically, Timberlane has been higher than the state average. This past year in 2023, we were ranked the 46th lowest of 162 New Hampshire school districts, coming in at about $300 less per pupil. Next slide, please. Also looking at historical enrollment and projecting out enrollment. What you have a visual here is dating back to the year 2014 and up until 2023. We're looking at real actual numbers of students in our buildings. The projection out from 2023 out 10 years hence is from NESDEC. We are projected to take in an additional 266 students over the next decade. And at a recent board meeting, we had a presentation where we looked at the analysis of the NESDEC numbers. And what we are concluding is that most of the time they are conservative. So we're looking at that number 266 as a conservative estimate. Next slide, please. Looking at positions and staffing across our history, again dating back to 2014 and bringing you up to the current state of affairs. From a high of 2018, staffing level here in the Timberlane Regional School District. Since that time and leading up to this point, Timberlane has reduced 20 positions, professional positions, since fiscal year 2018. Next slide, please. This is a summary of the total education tax rate per town. We've provided you information back to 2017, really trying to paint out 3 distinct periods of time, looking at tax rates education-wise pre-COVID, during COVID and where we are after COVID in relationships between all 4 towns. Next slide, please. The 5th one here is looking at the tax impacts per town. We're looking at the year 2023. In addition to the numbers of students that you can see that are enrolled in our schools based upon the town in which they live, this slide also demonstrates the relationship between the assessed value of the town and the educational tax rate responsible in that town. Next slide, please. Continuing from that piece, we're looking at the current tax rates of fiscal year 24, and this is also illustrating what the potential impact or the projected impact would be if the proposed budget passes with each town in terms of what we project happen in the tax rate, and also if the proposed budget passes with the addition of the warrants and what the dollar increase would be for each town listed in their education tax rate. Again, projection, a lot of detailed analysis goes into this work, and we do the best we can to get those estimates as close to possible as we can. Next slide, please. And finally, I just want to leave the public with a picture of how revenue comes into the school district. It really comes in 3 distinct parts. You can see the smallest piece of that pie coming in over about 2% is federal money, a little over 12% is state money, and then the rest, north of 85%, is here in the local area. And that will conclude my remarks, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krieger. You will note that in Article 2, one of the sentences said, should this article be defeated, the operating budget will be $89,585,373, which is called the default budget. Somewhere on the screen, the next slide should show you what the default budget is actually defined as under the revised statutes annotated, RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 9. It's quite extensive, but it's set by law. And Article 40:13 IX small c defines contracts. We usually get asked, how do you get to this default budget and what happens? The default budget is not amendable at tonight's meeting, but the board thought you should have a little bit of knowledge about how it comes about, and I understand the school board president and chair, Katie Knutson, you're going to speak on the default budget? I hope.
Well, I can. The default budget overview, again, it's set by law. It's not something that we can amend tonight. 2023-2024 voted budget was $87,046,915. So that puts our default budget for 2024-2025 to $89,835,373. This is a net change of $2,788,458, which is a 3.2% increase. That's really all we can say about it. What, the budget drivers?
Yeah.
No. Special education is $1,037,100. Salary increases is $746,498. Benefits is $568,026. Transportation is $264,516. Food service is $134,497. Increase in DW professional services is $127,822. And one-time budget items is decreased by $90,000.
Thank you, Ms. Knutson. Is there anyone else to speak on Article 2, the operating budget?
Beechanola, sorry. Karen Steele, 4 Pebblebrook Road, Atkinson. Could someone just speak to why the default budget is higher than the operating budget, please?
Someone like to answer that? Yes, ma'am.
The default budget is developed based on a formula that is directed by the state. Is the prior year budget increased or decreased by specific contractual agreements? So it's not really anything that we can put projections into. It depends on the year. Some years it is higher than the proposed. Some years it's lower than the proposed because it's just a formula that has very strict regulations. So it's just the prior year voted budget plus or minus any contractual agreements.
I go to Representative True.
Thank you. Chris True, Sandown. Generally about the default budget,
That's always a sore subject with me. Basically, oftentimes...
Street address in Sandown, please,
41
Representative.
Hunt Pond, Sandown. Oftentimes, the default budget seems to be more than the operating budget proposed. So basically, the taxpayers are left with no choice. They're left with the choice of take what we say or pay more. It is what it is. It just seems patently unfair. At the beginning of this presentation, there was a slide up that was showing that there was a 2.7% increase over this year and last year. I couldn't write it all down, but it didn't seem to mesh. But the operating budget this year is 89,120. What was the operating budget last year, minus any warrant articles?
Put that slide back up.
It's,
Put the slide back up.
the last year's voted budget was 87,046,915.
That included all the warrant articles, right?
Yeah, that was the voted budget, yeah, including warrant
Yeah,
articles.
so I'm not asking about that, because you're comparing apples to oranges. I'm asking about the proposed operating budget of this year, 89,120, to the proposed operating budget of last year, less any other warrant articles.
Without the warrant articles, the fiscal year 2024 budget was 83,270,418.
I'm not a mathematician, but that seems to be a 7% increase, roughly, not a 2.7. It just seems dishonest to say it's a 2.7 increase to the taxpayers when it's really a 7% increase. Thank you.
Put that slide back up that shows that for Mr. True. The budget overview slide. Go back. I want Mr. True to be able to see that slide. Back up. We're going to have a discussion. Let's have a discussion. Right there. Is this the one you're referring to? Oops, sorry, Mr. Moderator.
So you're taking the voted budget of last year, which included all the warrant articles passed, with the proposed budget of this year, which includes no warrant articles passed because they haven't been passed yet.
That's correct.
So saying it's a 2.7% increase, I think is a disservice to the taxpayers when roughly, it looked like a 7% increase. That should be reflected, factual, not comparing apples to oranges.
If I may, just to address two different things, if you do actually multiply the 87,046,915 by 2.7, that is the number you get. And again, it doesn't include warrant articles. And I know there's been a lot of discussion, and you brought it up yourself, that there's some discomfort when the default is actually lower than the proposed, and there was a suggestion that, you know, people were playing with the numbers. This is actually fairly standard, and going back to 2010, exactly 50% of default budgets have that differential. So 50% were higher, 50% were lower. It's mandated by the state, the formula that they use. We were able to cut a lot of fat this year, so yes, the default is higher, and again, that's not unusual. It's been that way since 2010, half the time.
As I said, it is what it is. It just doesn't seem fair. But somebody just told me that the voted budget from last year, the proposed budget from last year, was 83. Comparing last year's proposed budget to this year's proposed budget is not 2.7%. It's 7%, or whatever, it's 5.5%.
Yeah, that's what it says, that is compared to the voted budget, not to the proposed budget, because what the voters vote for was the voted budget. So that's how we compare, because that's what taxes were set up on the voted budget.
I'm not doing well explaining my position. You can't say you're going to compare apples to oranges, therefore we did a great job, it's only 2.7% increase. That's unfair and dishonest to the taxpayers. You can't compare apples to oranges. You can't compare the proposed budget from this year, which does not include any warrant articles, to the voted budget of last year, which included all past. A more honest representation of the percent increase would be to take this proposed budget from this year, comparing that to the 83 million proposed budget of last year. That's all I'm saying. You're comparing apples to oranges, and 2.7 seems like we all did a great job. It's a 7% increase. That's not a great job compared to 2.7.
I do understand your point. I understand what you're trying to parse here. However, I don't think the slide is misrepresentative at all. It clearly states the voted budget was 87 and change, and our proposed is 89. That math does work out. I understand that you are taking issue with the fact that one is representing the voted and the other is representing the proposed. That's your point. I take it. We do not know what the actual budget will be for 2025. We do know what the proposed will be, and that's why we're presented this way. This is the same way it's been presented for decades. I do understand your point, however.
Ma'am, at this mic. Nola, you're up.
I apologize. Nola Whitman, Hawk Lane, Danville.
Street address?
Oh, Hawk Lane, 47 Hawk Lane, Danville. I would like to amend the following sentence from operating budget warrant as follows. Totaling $89,120,265 to now read totaling $82,944,063. That would be a reduction of $6,176,202.
Name and address for the record.
Last out.
We have a motion made and duly seconded to amend Article 2 operating budget by deleting $89,120,265 and replacing it with $6,107,000. To now read $82,944,063. $82,944,063. Would you like to speak on your motion?
Okay. All four towns felt a large tax impact at the end of last year. We went from a $76 million budget in 2023 to an $87 million budget for 23-24. That's just under $11 million increase. Now, many are now struggling financially. We're all worried about what increases to expect at the end of this year. Since we have another very important warrant article to consider, I want to ensure that Article 3, the 3-year TTA collective bargaining agreement, has a fighting chance. I feel that the tax impact from both warrant articles would again be hard for many taxpayers. I propose reducing the budget by the same amount as the teacher's contract, the $6,176,202 brings it to the $82,120,265. Most have expressed the need to have their salaries more in line with other districts. Besides, some of our staff felt the same sting of last year's tax bill too. Also, they do deserve a raise, and by reducing the operating budget, it may be more appealing to vote yes for Article 3. Where to cut? We have a very capable CFO, and I'm sure that the money can be found, but I do have some suggestions that could be considered. Let's start with the $2,427,107 that was from this year's lease payment. That money has already been collected, but will not be due until July 2024, after we enter a new fiscal year. A former school board rep asked the school board 2 separate times, the last being at the public hearing, will the money be returned to the taxpayers? She never got a response at either time. In a meeting last year, the financial manager suggested using those dollars towards solar panels in the fields behind the high school, middle school. In the end, it was not possible because we only had 1 acre of land. While I think the right thing to do is to return it to the taxpayers, I have little faith based on what happened in June 2023. Second source, at the June 15th meeting, funds in the amount of over $5 million were encumbered and/or used for various projects. An example would be the tennis courts at $448,000. That really should have gone out to warrant and out to bid, but we're not here to rehash that decision. The track was encumbered at $470,000. From that same June 15th minutes, and in quotes, the board had some discussion regarding encumbered funds. This money can only be used for one-time expenses. Interesting, after reading that statement, that money was put back into the default budget. Since it's already proposed and in default, $1 million could be removed in support of the teacher's contract. Third, another $2 million could surely be found in the different lines within the budget. So many transfers were done from the end of the last fiscal year to the tune of $2,421,800. We went from having a surplus of $4.1 million to $1.6 at the end of fiscal year 2023 due to encumbering funds. Note, we entered 24 fiscal year with an extra $6 million from last year's budget. I feel confident that we can manage the district with almost $83 million and another $6 million for the teachers. I think this proposal is a reasonable compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on the motion to reduce the operating budget? Yes, sir. Name and address.
Nolan Bellatier, 24 North Avenue, Plastow, New Hampshire. I am very surprised because I had a almost identical motion in my hand, which I was blown away. I think this actually makes sense. If you want to get teachers to have raises, it's gonna, we're gonna have to save somewhere, and if we want to put it somewhere else. We can't keep putting this burden on the taxpayers. A lot of us felt it last year. A lot of us don't have kids in the school system. A lot of us are homeschooling, and there's a lot of people in our community that are on fixed incomes, and this is going to send them right out of our towns. So I support this motion.
We'll go to Jack on this end and then to the mic.
I would vehemently stand opposed to this amendment. A couple reasons why. First of all, the $2 million that was set aside for the lease, that will be determined, I think, at the end of this board, or that gets decided at the end of the fiscal year, as far as I know. So there's been no decision made on that. As far as that money being proposed for the solar panels, that's incorrect. As far as the tennis courts and the track go, let me be clear. We kicked the can down the road for 20 years. There were many, many years we didn't invest one dime in our facilities. One of the reasons why you see the bump is because we're starting to go down that road. So if you all this is doing is borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and would actually be going backwards, not forwards. As far as the tennis courts go, if you extrapolate that out over the life expectancy, which is forever, the new tennis courts that got put in, it is the cheapest platform that the district has right now per student, and you're never going to have to touch those again. I wish we could do that to all our assets here. The tennis courts were broken, now they're fixed. The track, we went 6 years without a home track meet. You want to talk about social and emotional needs of kids? Go to a track meet on a Saturday afternoon and watch those kids. And by the way, there were many people that don't think that our athletic facilities aren't part of our assets. They're just as important as a building. Look at athletes, less drug use, less suicide rate, higher grade scores, more likely to go on to college. We're investing, that is something that directly affects students. And when we have something that's broken and kids go to another school district for a track meet or a hockey meet, whatever, they're embarrassed. I can tell you firsthand they're embarrassed. And so yeah, there's an increase, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's because we weren't taking care of business year over year over year, decade over decade, and now we're paying the price. And I stood here for the last 10 years begging for us to take action on it 10, 15 years ago. This is a bad warrant article, a bad amendment, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Marianne Springer, 160 Sandown Road, Danville. I'm in support of the amendment. I agree with the presenter's position that teacher salaries are important, and the warrant articles that address teacher and assistant salaries need to be approved. I was originally going to come up here and ask, why has there been a 20% increase over the last 2 years? Because I'm looking at page 17, this fiscal year 2023, actual expenditures were $73 million. And now, 2 years later, the budget is $89 million. I haven't heard anything tonight about why there's been such a dramatic increase over the 2 years. I understand this past year is a very small increase, and unfortunately I wasn't here last year and I don't have the history about last year's budget, but it was shocking to me when I looked at the budget materials for this meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker.
Melissa Marr, 6 Lower Road, Plastow. I'd like a little bit more conversation around this proposal. However, I'm concerned more about the idea that I've heard there's no room to cut the budget unless we're cutting programs, yet we're hearing from lots of staff and teachers plenty of great ideas or things that they're seeing in the schools that really aren't necessarily working for them, and they're the ones that are working with the kids. For instance, a lot of specialists in the building that aren't even having any one-on-one time with the children. They're working as coaches for the teachers. So what is their active role, really, if they have no play with the children? If they are working with the kids, that's great, but teachers don't need coaches. That's kind of an insult to them. So that's, you know, I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody by your job right now, but, you know, that's a math specialist, a speech, a reading specialist for each grade, each school. That's a lot of positions, that's a lot of money. I've been told there's 5 HR positions at the SAU with that job used to being done by 1 person. So if the budget committee wants to talk to some of the teachers and staff in the school, I think you're gonna find some really, really great ways to cut this budget. It may mean people losing some jobs, but right now they seem unnecessary in the, you know, there's more important things. You know, it's a luxury to have some of these things, which would be great if we didn't have failing facilities, if we had plenty of teachers, if we had all of that. So there's ways to make cuts. Some people with those jobs may not like them, but it seems like there's plenty of ways to do that. Thank you.
The gentleman on my left, because you haven't spoken yet, go ahead.
Ryan Lebrecht, 174 Main Street, Plastow. Last name is spelled L-A-B-R-E-C-Q-U-E. Just want to follow the rules. First off, I want to thank the board and the budget committee, especially previous years, for the $2,000 tax bill that we got last year due to the debacle that ensued. Also want to thank the current board, current budget committee for the probably over $1,000 tax increase that this all represents this year. It's not sustainable. We're acting like Congress here. And, you know, for me, it just means I work more. I have the ability to suck it up, work more, make more money. That's fine. To a lot of people, I also have a modest house. My wife and I have a modest house, so our increase was modest in comparison to some, and we bought our house a long time ago. I feel sad for those that bought in the last 3 or 4 years, paid stupid money for their properties, and now have the horrendous tax bill associated with it. And this school system is driving that in almost full, although every one of the towns associated with the school system is also drunk in spending. It is beyond me to believe that 4 towns, 4 fire departments, police departments, highway departments, all the equipment, all the staff, 4 town halls, all the other departments, recreation departments and building departments and clerk's offices and blah, 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 so on and so forth. The collective 4 towns are less than half the budget of the school system, and that just boggles my mind. You know, it's unfortunate. I'm actually very encouraged this year that we have others that are joining the let's slow down movement, if you will. I think it's unfortunate last year that the dollars passed for the schools are falling down, which is what I was told by the group up here last year, but the schools are falling down. So the first thing that we see outright are tennis courts, surface pavement, track surfacing, etc. That's not the school falling down. I understand athletic facilities would be fantastic, but save the drama. I grew up practicing soccer on a sewage treatment plant field in Lewiston, Maine. I'm okay for it. I didn't die. Still here. So while it would be great, I think we need focus and we need to drive this budget down. So I support this reduction wholeheartedly.
I don't see anybody new at the mic. Yes, ma'am.
Nola Whitman, Danville. I'd like to address, if it's okay, to address Jack's, one of his comments.
If you want to respond to him, you may.
Okay. I'm just going to make it brief. All the facts that I had, or all the suggestions I have made, I did research on. And in fact, I have copies of the minutes in regards to the solar panels. It is from the October 19th, 2023 minutes. Mr. Watson spoke on the solar panels. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it does say Mr. Watson. She said the first lease payment isn't due until July 2024. Our current budget has a $2 million payment for the lease. She asked the board if they could be open to contemplating using these funds for the solar panel. I have the minutes. I'd like to submit them.
You can hand them to the clerk. Thank you. No, you can keep them. I'm not going to. New person at the mic. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of new to this, and I apologize if I'm...
Take your time, but first give us your name and address.
Sure, the name is Ken Peterson, and the address is 38 Sanborn Street, Danville.
Thank you.
So I had a couple of questions, and I'm just kind of curious about looking over some of the budgets, and I noticed the professional services, they rose from the actual in 2022 of 1.2 million to the proposed of 3.2 million in the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget. It's like a 167% increase, and I'm trying to understand why.
Would someone like to answer his question, or are you able to?
So the majority of the increase in the professional services line is...
I'm sorry, it just...
I'm sorry.
I'm an ex-artillery officer. I got bad ears.
I'm sorry. I know I have an accent too, so I apologize. The majority of the increase in the professional service line is due to special education required services. We are required to provide services to special education students, and that is by law. So that increase comes from the special education requirements.
Also, I have a question about student transportation. And I noticed in, again, going back to 2022 actual, it was 3.3 million, and this year, well, the fiscal 2025 proposal is for 4.4 million. Yet the student enrollment stayed the same, so I was just wondering.
For special education, I'm sorry, for transportation, we have a contract. We have a 3-year contract with the bus company, and it's a contractual agreement. So we just have to account for what the contract is. Any increase that we have in the contract is what goes into the budget.
Are there other bus companies?
Yeah, we have to go out to bid for that every 3 years. The last time we went out to bid was last year, and only 2 companies submit bids. This was the less expensive option, and that's why we went with them.
Okay. And I noticed a couple of items that I didn't even understand what they were. One was the 2025 principal and interest. The proposed is 2.2 million, and the actual in 2022 was 67,000. That seems like an awful lot.
Do you have an account number or line that you can give me? I'm not sure what line that is.
I don't have it, I'm sorry.
So the principal and interest increased because we have the lease payment. So last year, we passed a $25 million lease payment. The principal and the interest combined for that is $2 million. So that's
What was the payment for? I'm sorry.
for the $25 million lease that passed last year.
I see.
The annual payment for principal and interest for that lease is about $2 million a year.
What was the lease for?
Is for capital improvements. So we did an assessment of all of our buildings 3 years ago. We have a company that came to all of our buildings and assessed them. They came back with a $130 million list of improvements, not improvements, to get our facilities to the condition that they are supposed to be. It's $130 million. So the school board and the budget committee form a committee to assess the $130 million list and prioritize. The first criteria was to identify projects that will give us savings the fastest. So we put those in year 1 and year 2. So we changed all the lighting in all the schools. We convert to LED because that's the biggest savings realization project. So that $25 million came out of the $130 million list based on priorities of lighting, HVAC systems, boilers, and roofs. That's pretty much what it's for.
Is there a way of like floating a municipal bond to cover some of this and maybe have people across the country pay?
Well, if you take a municipal bond, we have to pay for that as well. And the interest in the municipal bonds are about double of what the lease was. So we have a 4% interest in a 20-year lease, which is pretty reasonable. If you know, the interest rates right now are extremely high. So we got a 4% interest on that $25 million lease.
Could you also explain what the fund transfer is?
I'm sorry, you there?
Fund transfer?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you, Mr. Is it
Yes.
Peterson? Can you maybe ask this question, because we're really on the motion to reduce the budget.
Okay.
And I let you go on because I'm of the opinion your questions is to help you whether you want to vote to do that.
Yes.
But we still have time after the vote on to reduce it to still discuss it.
I'll be glad to say thank
So I'm
you.
not want to cut you off, it's just,
No, that's fine.
I'm going to start to get a lot of daggers up here, you know? So
Thank you.
if we can talk about the amendment and relate your questions or comments to the amendment, whether it passes or fails, then we'll go back and speak on the main motion or the motion as amended. So everybody will get a chance to talk, but I know we're stuck here if we don't take a vote on the amendment. In regards to the amendment, would you like to speak, ma'am?
Correct. Diana True, 41 Hunt Pond Road, Sandown. I'm for the amendment, and I'll tell you why. Living in Sandown, every year we cross our fingers that our operating budget for our town passes. And it's the only thing that the town members feel they have control of. And our default budget is never higher than our operating budget. So when our town budget fails, that's the only control we have because we have no control of the school budget, which continues to grow.
Thank you. New speakers? New speakers? He was at the mic.
I have a motion for secret ballot with 5 signatures. May I speak to my motion, Mr. Moderator?
I just want to make sure everybody's here. We know you're here.
Yes, present.
Ryan Lebrecq, you're here. Jessica Peltier, you're here. David Solomon, he's here. And Nola Whitman, you're here. Okay. So we will have a secret ballot. I'll read you the instructions on that before you exit the auditorium. So do you speak on the motion?
My thought process is that there's probably a lot of people here that want to see the teachers' raises go through, but maybe not necessarily want to raise their hand to show that they want to reduce the school budget. So I think doing a secret ballot actually makes a lot of sense, and that's really it. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Lebrecq?
24 Main Street, Plastow, Ryan Lebrecq. Question for the Budget Committee. There was actually it's on the screen behind us here, recommended by the Budget Committee, the operating budget, 720. Could the two people that did not recommend it speak to why they did not recommend it? Thank you.
Does anyone on the Budget Committee wish to speak on that?
Hi, Liz Costa for Evergreen Drive, Plastow.
I think you can take it out of the mic there. There you go.
There we go. I voted no because although I support the teachers, I support the staff, I support the district, I just felt that it was too high. And I just could not, in good conscience, vote for the budget. And I just felt that the people, economic situation that we're in this was not the environment to vote this budget.
My name is Michael Mascola, also a resident of Plastow. I made my decision based on looking at the needs of the school and the needs of the taxpayers and trying to come to a consensus where we can keep both parties moderately happy. And I know it's challenging, but I wanted to put some relief in the form of the taxpayers. And that's why I'm one of that number 2 up there.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it on? Okay, there we go. Jess Hudgens, 25 Walnut Hill Road, Sandown. Just going line by line, and this is to the amendment, we have everything really broken down. I apologize, I don't know if I have the same page as I printed all of this stuff out from the website. But we have everything broken down from departments, salaries, educational, but then we get to other professional services or information access fees. One of the bigger ones was in the special education, other professional services, which was $1,425,000. I don't need specifics, but what does that other or miscellaneous cover? Because they're kind of, obviously it's vague and they're big amounts. Does anybody have?
Someone wish to answer that?
Thank you.
If you do, go ahead.
It really depends which line specifically you're referring to. I know the school board budget has a $25,000 miscellaneous line, which covers a lot of different things that the school board.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, are you referring or asking specifically for the special education, what that is all about?
I mean, I gave that one as an example because that seemed to be one of the more expensive ones, but it's, again, it's other, so I didn't.
It is, absolutely. So unfortunately, Timberlane has a higher than state average number of students who are receiving special education supports. We are required by law, by the state of New Hampshire, when this need arises, to provide those services, whether we have that personnel in-house or not. And if you look, we've had historically a lot of vacancies. We cannot fill those positions in-house. So a lot of that is we have to ship our students out to receive those services. The state, please correct me if I'm wrong, for those students gives a supplemental $2,600. We have some students whose special services that are required by the state to provide are in excess of $100,000. We have many of them. So obviously the offset from the state, does not cover that. Additionally, we have been forced in many situations where we're able to provide those services in-house at Timberlane, but by bringing people in that are not Timberlane or SAU employees at 2 to 3 times the cost of what it was if we could actually hire somebody and fill that role. That is one of the greatest budget drivers right now. Right. There simply aren't enough of these people out there, and our pay rates aren't competitive enough to attract those few that are out there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation.
No, thank you. It was just with every, I don't even know, I'm not super familiar with this. I just tried to do as much research as I could. But it's in every kind of chunk, student activities. So I just wanted to know kind of across the board what's other or miscellaneous. So I'm sure it's hard for you to.
Yeah, no, we can go line by line, and I was on.
Oh,
no. No, I mean, so we have gone, the budget committee has literally gone line by line. And, the folks that are sitting over there, it's not because the gallery seats are better. It's because they put a lot of hard work in, and it was meeting after meeting. And this budget was presented to us by the administrators, by the school, by the principals, listening to their teachers and what their teachers' needs are. And they came to us with what they thought was a pretty reasonable budget. And BudCom went back and said, no, you need to make cuts. Whether you want to or not, you need to make cuts. And we did. If you look at the elementary schools, I think the biggest over budget from the prior year was Sandown. They were looking for bigger tables in Sandown North because the tables originally were for smaller people than they're currently housing. Right. And I believe it was $30-something thousand. That was the biggest driver. That's where a lot of that miscellaneous comes from, unfortunately, and I'll be happy to sit with you afterwards.
Okay.
And,
no, thank you so much. That's
all. No, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Sean O'Neill, Danville, 16J Drive. Our wants and needs are endless as a society. We only have one precious resource in this district, and that's our taxpayer dollar that people are paying. At the local level, we're also fighting for that same dollar to improve our local infrastructure as well. And I commend this gentleman right here bringing that statistic forward to me that 50% of the 4 towns is still, the sum of all that is less than 50% of this budget. That was an eye-opening. So thank you for that data point. I'm in support of this amendment because this is just not, you can't keep on doing this. If this teacher contract is to pass, which I do believe the teachers do deserve this COLA increase, you're going to be looking at a $91.5 million, which will then now be the new, as Representative True pointed out, that will be the start of the next year's presentation of what was voted on. This is not sustainable, folks. 38% was our increase in Danville. And one of the things that I think that you guys are sheltered from that you don't see is you don't see the people coming before our town and actually crying because they can't pay their taxes. I only wish that you could see that and see the indignation that they have for this whole process. They work their whole lives and they just can't even make it work anymore and they don't know where to turn. And you guys get to be sheltered from that because the town is collecting your tax benefit, your taxes on your behalf and paying it. I wish you could see this because I hope it would open up your eyes. And it is. It's sad to see this. Thank you. Yes, Jack.
Yeah, so our founding fathers set our government up basically based on disagreeing, the ability to disagree. So I respect Sean and the time he's put in, but I would suggest that our precious resource are our children. I would also, in making the comparison, I'm going to ask for some assistance from the administration here, that when you combine the 4 towns and the total amount that they spend versus the school district is the largest employer in the town. I believe we have 700 employees, 9 buildings, 600,000 square feet of 600,000 square feet of assets. Am I accurate in that? 650? And we ignored those for years. There's a little thing when it comes to athletic facilities, it's called liability. So we need to make sure the main priority of those precious resources, which is our children. No, this is about taking the money away from that because it's going to come out of capital, right? So when the first thing that's going to be cut will be the capital line, something we have tried so hard to try and start addressing. So I would love to know where that $6 million is going to come from, and now you're pitting the needs of the budget against the teacher's contract, which really isn't fair. If there's a want in any of that versus a need, I'll stand with you. But these are needs, and there's a huge, huge difference.
New speaker.
Dennis Heffernan, 4 Secluded Circle, Plastow. I'm going to ask that we call this question. It seems that the discussion, it's the same people coming up, and it's the same discussion over and over. So I'm going to ask that we call this.
All in favor of calling the question, raise your cards, including those that made the motion. So I don't think we need those objecting. None. So I'm going to read once more the amendment. Then I'm going to show you a voting card, and then I'm going to read you instructions that we hope you follow, and so don't the supervisors of the checklist. The motion is to amend the Article 2 operating budget by deleting $89,120,265 and replace it with $82,944,063. Everyone should have a voting card. You should have signed your card when you came in. You need to bring the cards with you. You're going to hand the cards, and don't leave till I finish my instructions, please. You're going to hand the card to the supervisors of the checklist. They're going to check off. Yes, sir.
Allowed for people to vote? So in other words, if somebody's watching this, they should be able to come down here and participate in the American...
I'm not going to give extra time. If they would like to come, they can come. They should be here. The televising is to help the citizens to know, but I can't set a time. We're in the middle of the voting mode, as we say in the State House, so I'm not going to entertain that motion at this time. So you're going to bring your cards to the supervisors of the checklist. They're going to mark number 1, hand you back the card with a voting card. Immediately, you're going to vote on the card, yes or no, how you feel on the motion. A yes means we reduce the operating budget by $6,176,202. A no means we keep the printed Article 2 operating budget. So they're going to give you back this plus a voting card. The voting card, you should mark it and then place it in the box. Each of the supervisors has a box for your secret ballot. When everybody is done voting, the moderators and the supervisors, we will count and come back and give you the vote. Now remember, this is not on the article itself, it's on the amendment to reduce the operating budget. Now I'm going to read you the instructions that I received from the supervisors of the checklist. We're going to hold a secret ballot vote. Those who wish to vote are asked to exit the auditorium through the main door. Voting will take place across the room where you checked in, room 707. Enter that room on the door on the left. Go out of the auditorium, turn left, go to the door on the left. Once you've voted on your card, drop the card in the box, enter on the exit on the right. So go in the left, Get your card, go to your tables where all the supervisors are, exit on the right. Come back to the auditorium, and if you have any help or need any help, just ask. And if let me ask, maybe Jim, can you go see if the supervisors are ready for the secret ballot? I can't see through the wall. So maybe if my assistant moderators can help direct people in the left and out the right, that would be helpful. Are they ready, Jim? Okay, so please in an orderly fashion, exit, go to your left, go through, vote, come out the right. Thank you. And voted, you have 30 seconds to please go vote, then we're shutting the doors and counting. You have 30 seconds. Thank you. Voters to retake your seats. We have a count.
Sorry, excuse me.
Thank you. The votes have been tabulated and double-checked. Yes votes in favor of the amendment, 76. No votes opposed to the amendment, 115. The amendment fails. We're back on the floor to the Article 2 operating budget. Discussions on the operating budget as proposed. Yes, Mr. LeBrecq.
Ryan LeBrecq, 174 Main Street. Just wanted to respond to this gentleman's discussion earlier about, it's about the kids. I'm not against the kids. I'm not against public education or education in general. I went to a public school as well, and turned out pretty good as a result of it, at least in my opinion. Some others may say otherwise. But in any case, I just feel, I don't have kids myself. I haven't been blessed with that yet. Maybe it'll happen someday. But if I were a parent, do I want, when you say it's about the kids have to be raised by their families at home. And the more money it's taken out of the pockets of the family, the less money is going to be available to those kids to raise them. So just because the money is overspent at school doesn't mean those kids are going to benefit greatly. Second point, in regards to athletic facilities, I encourage you to read a book. It's called One Goal. It's about a soccer team in my hometown of Lewiston, Maine. The city of Lewiston, Maine brought in, actually the federal government settled Somalian refugees in the city of Lewiston. And while we had a mediocre soccer team, I was on one of those mediocre soccer teams. It wasn't very good. The Somali immigrants practiced every day on a dirt parking lot barefoot, and still do, because that's what they prefer and that's how they learned. And those students won the state championship multiple times for the city of Lewiston, Maine, growing up and practicing in a dirt parking lot. So talent has nothing to do with the facilities. Talent has everything to do with the individual's drive and desire to improve themselves. And while it would be great to have the best facilities in the nation, the facilities we have are not horrific by any means. And I say that also with firsthand accounts. I used to volunteer in schools in Providence, Rhode Island, and if you think our schools are bad at all, go to an inner city school. I led a team of 150 volunteers, and in a nutshell, the locker rooms had no benches in them for the students to change. They had no working bathrooms. They were using the shower. The bathrooms in the facility, 1 out of 10 toilets actually worked. Our schools are nowhere near, and I don't want them to be anywhere near that by any means. But, again, I think we need to count the blessings for what we have and stop aspiring to have it all.
If there's nobody at the mic, then yes, ma'am.
Mary Ann Springer, 160 Sandown Road, Danville. I'd like to ask, we're back on this.
The regular budget
the regular
and
budget.
the Article 2 as printed.
Okay.
Yes.
Could somebody explain at a very high level to me what the 20% increase from the actual expenditures in fiscal year 23 to the $89 million budget, what the kids are getting for that 20% increase. It's from 73 million to 89 million over 2 years.
Does anyone wish to answer that question? We need the mic on the main dais open. She can't.
Hello. So for the last 2 years, there had been a lot of drivers. Obviously, we have a big budget. Most of it, I will say, is in the special education, transportation, food service. Those are probably the 3 major drivers. We also have the $25 million lease payment, which was a $2 million increase. We also have, obviously, salaries and benefits, which count for 70% of our budget. Any contractual agreements, as I don't know if you are aware, but we have 6 unions within the district. So those are contractual agreements that we have and increases that we have to give our employees. So 70% of our budget is based on salaries and benefits for our employees.
Okay. Is that lease agreement that was approved apparently last year, the $2 million, is that $2 million every year from now on?
Yes, for 20 years. And I know the question was asked. The first payment was, we were supposed to make it this year, but we signed the contract for the lease in July. So the payment is not due until July of this year. So that $2 million go directly back to the taxpayers. Those $2 million this year are going to go back directly to taxpayers.
And that will offset taxes for the upcoming budget?
I'm sorry?
And that will offset taxes for the upcoming budget?
For this year's taxes. So that $2 million will be a credit for this year, for the 2024 taxes that are set up in October.
Okay.
We also have to take into consideration that the last 2 years, we had a lot of additional funding from the state for the COVID relief funding. So the last 2 years are not a good comparison in any sense. Because of that, the government, both the federal and the state government, gave us a lot of additional funding that otherwise we do not have.
So since the federal government spending money has stopped coming in, now we're paying it, but we're doing extra stuff still because of COVID?
No, we don't do extra stuff anymore because of COVID, but because we have so much money coming in the last 2 years from the government for the COVID relief, that offset the expenses. So it made it look like we spent less, but in reality, it was that we had more funding coming in.
But I don't think our budget has ever been close to 89 million. Not before COVID. It was much lower before COVID.
Right, like I said, 70% of our budget is salaries and benefits. So if we have a contractual agreement that the employees are getting a 7% increase every year, then we have to give them a 7% increase every year, or a 3% increase every year. So those are contractual agreements that are with the unions, and we have to do that. And that's 70% of our budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nolan Bellatier, 24 North Ave. I would like to move to change the operating budget from $89,120,265 to $85,620,265.
Seconded by Mr. LeBrecq from Plastow. I have a motion, moved and seconded. Moved to change the operating budget amount from $89,120,265 to $85,620,260, looks like a 5, 65.
My fives are bad. You're correct, Mr. Harb.
85,620, 265.
It's reduced by 3 million, and it's a little change. So about half. I figured we were close, so If I can speak to my motion, Mr. Moderator?
Yes, you may, Nolan. Go ahead.
This is again in the same premise as before. Obviously, that did not pass. But if you want raises and you're asking the taxpayers to pay an additional $6 million, you can't want to put that burden on the members. You're going to have to make some cuts. If you want to get, you have to give. And that's pretty much, that's the premise of this motion. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chrissy McKeeman, 53 Moose Hollow Road, Danville. And I just want to support what Sean said, that people are really hurting. I volunteer at the food pantry and in a community organization in town. And we are feeding people every week. And it's only getting worse. And if we don't address the number on the screen, I think 85 million is still way too much for our town people. Danville took a huge hit in these last tax cuts, and the way I see it is that if we approve this budget, we were hit really bad the last time, and if we approve it again, we're just going to be hit again really bad this time. I have 2 daughters that I love dearly, and I would do anything in the world for them, but I need to feed them too. So I think we need to really think about this number in a more responsible way so that we can feed our children and also educate our children. We need to do something because this is way too much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Nancy LaValle, LaVallee, 24 G.H. Carter Drive in Danville. I'd like to clarify, I'm not sure if I heard correctly. Are you looking at giving a 7% increase in salaries?
Can we have a mic on the main dais?
I'm sorry, I just said that as a number. All the contracts for all the unions are different. They have different steps and they have different cost of living adjustments. So I just said the number 7 for.
So what is the scale for that?
I'm sorry?
What is the scale for the adjustments, the salary adjustments?
Like I said, we have 6 unions, and each of the unions have a different salary schedule. They all are in our website if you want to look at them. We have all the union contracts there. We have 6 unions, and they all are there.
7% seems a bit, extreme to me. It doesn't
I
seem
said
like...
that I pick up that number electorally, so I apologize. I'm not saying that's what it is. It's just a number that
Okay.
I just pick up a number. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question. As far as the extracurricular activities with sports, does the school district pay for the entire program, or do the students have do they have to contribute to that program as well?
Yes. Mr. Krieger.
There is that.
Can you turn the mic on?
There's absolutely a cost for athletic programming. The district pays for transportation. They may pay for some uniforms or equipment. They may pay for the stipends for those coaches. They pay for the stipends for the referees. So it comes at a significant cost to fund those experiences.
Okay, do the families contribute to that, though, the students? Do they have to pay to participate in a special program, like so much a year?
The vice chair, I think, would like to answer that.
There's not an assigned fee, so you don't come into it saying you have to pay $50 to play hockey. However, the kids have to buy I think football is about the only sport that gets the majority of their equipment. Otherwise, all these kids are buying all their own equipment. They're contributing to other things. We raise money through boosters for stuff and things of that nature to pay for their things, field time to get ready, balls, things of that nature. So it's not free. These kids aren't coming in and having carte blanche given to them. They are paying and contributing, and boosters and parents are contributing and putting money into these events.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Moderator, my questions to Mrs. Watkins is I would like to ask her in regards to the statements that she made in regards to the Fed funding that we received during the COVID times. Were you saying that was part of our budget?
No, I'm not saying that it was part of our budget, but that offsets the expenses. So when the taxes are set, that counts as an additional revenue to
If
offset.
the feds give us money that's outside of our budget to be spent, it does not part of the tax calculation, period. So your statement is not valid in its premise.
Sean, it offsets the
If the-
expenses for tax setting purposes.
The feds gave us a lot of money in regards to like air handlers, which we replaced a lot of boilers, all those equipments that were capital projects, but that was outside of the budget. That did not affect our tax rates. Were outside of the budget. They did not affect our tax rate. And to sit here and say that is a misstatement, and I'm calling you on it. Thank you.
Mr. Sapien?
Yeah, I just want to talk about one of the things I proposed and one thing I voted on, the tennis courts and the turf a few years ago. Anything that I've done or proposed or voted on would be to, not because it looks good, not because it's fancy, but because it reduced the operating budget, and it was a long-time investment that would reduce the cost to this district. If we'd put in the turf when I suggested it, it would already be paid for, and our cost to manage and maintain those fields would be reduced dramatically. So I think sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot without thinking things out. The other thing I would like to see, because I have a microphone right now, is I built a baseball field out there, and I did it for free. I did it with a few donations from some local charities, and I did it with a few volunteers. If we can get more volunteers going out there and assisting our talented facilities director, that's one way to offset costs. But it's a little bit frustrating when you're out there by yourself and people are driving by to see how you're doing and then drive away to catch the football game. So that's it.
The chairman is reminding me that we're on an amendment to reduce the amount. So whether you're for or against it, can I kindly ask you to direct your comments and remarks to whether you're for it and why, and if you're against it and why, but not other items,
where would
okay?
that 2.5 million be coming from, or the 2 million or the 3 million that was suggested to be reduced? I mean, you make an amendment, what's that amendment based on?
So you would like to ask the maker of
Yeah.
the motion a question.
Sure.
Would he like to answer the question? If he doesn't, he doesn't have to.
Yep.
It's based on not breaking your residents' back, keeping people on fixed incomes in this town. And if you want to give the teachers a raise, you got to cut somewhere. You can't just compound the weight that the residents have to carry. My daughter doesn't even go to this school. I homeschool. I volunteer. I pay taxes. You don't. I give you money. I get nothing in return from this. And yet you want to pile more stuff on me and other families. It's a little insane. So that's where it's coming from, because I saw a huge increase. I know there's a number of people in here that saw a huge increase. If it's about the children, then why don't the funds follow the kids? Why isn't my daughter getting the, what is it now, 25,000 something per student if it's divided out? No? Okay. But if they don't follow students, it's not about the kids. It's about this institution. And you want to keep this institution going, you can't pile on the residents year after year. You have to give if you want to get. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm against this proposed amendment, and I am with a heavy heart because Sandown took a bigger hit than Danville did. I feel the pain. My residents feel the pain, and somebody had made a remark that they wish that we could feel the impact of that. We do. As a matter of fact, I have a board member up here who was accosted at a gas station this week by somebody who was irate. It's easy to be out there and say, you know, cut 2 million, cut 3 million. But it's much harder to say where that cut comes from. Right now, 70% of our expenditures are salaries and benefits. And then we have facilities. And these people saying, yeah, the facilities aren't that bad. I grew up in a waste dump. Great. I don't think a single person took a facilities tour and saw the boilers, saw the leaking roofs, saw the floors that needed to be replaced. We've essentially been treating it like a rental property for years. It's the biggest asset any of us have other than our homes. And we all know, most of us moved to this district knowing what the reputation of the school was. If the reputation of the school diminishes, so doesn't our most valuable asset. Please do not interrupt me. Our most valuable asset being our homes. So where do those cuts come from? They will have to come from the backs of the students. They will come from programs. I get it. We are keeping up, not even with inflation, okay? And we'll speak to the teachers later on. The cuts have been made. Go to a BudCom meeting. It's really easy to come once a year and say, hey, $2 million cut, $3 million cut, but from where? We don't have it. Trust me, I've been on BudCom, I've been on school board. We are all residents. We are all paying taxes too. We are all hurting just as much as everybody sitting out there. Yet, for the most part, we are all in agreement because we've seen how tight this process is. We've seen... The issue on the floor is whether this is an amendment that I'm supporting or not. The answer is no, and I'm giving the reasons for that, sir. Thank you.
Can I reply to that?
If you can keep it short, because
I can keep it short.
Your friend is
So
behind you.
it's not even a decrease of $3 million. You're asking for another increase of $6 million in addition to the operating budget. So it's not just cutting, it's going to actually be more than $3,000 that I'm cutting. It's going to go up by $3 million. So there's going to be an additional $3 million if the teachers get a raise. So that's more.
Mr. Liberak.
So, someone said earlier, you know, we want to, I think it was Ms. Sherman said earlier, if we want to have a conversation, let's have a conversation. I believe Mr. Sherwood indicated earlier as well that, you know, alluded to the budget process where, you know, department heads, administrators, whatever the hierarchy is, go to their teachers and say, tell me what you want. And that's a flawed budgeting process to begin with, because you're always going to get 1,000,001 things above and beyond what you're currently doing. And so you're starting the process out by opening up a blank check to submit the this is everything I want budget to the budget committee, to then pare it down. Sure, $2 million, fine, that's great, and I appreciate the fact that you guys pared it down $2 million, but it should be zero-based. It should start with last year's budget, and they should fight for every penny beyond last year's budget, not with a grandiose wish list of stuff that they show up with. And maybe that's not the way it went, but that's the way it sounded. And, you know, it's the same thing on the municipal levels as well. These budgets are brought forth, and I don't think there's much pushback.
I'd like to end the discussion on that, because now we're getting into the process of how the budget is arrived at, which isn't the motion on the floor. So I'd like to know, is there anyone else?
The budget,
excuse
so
me,
we
is
want
there
to
anyone
reduce
else
the
that would
budget.
like? Is there anyone else that wants to speak on the amendment? On the amendment. So here and then, I'm going to move the question on the amendment, and I'm going to ask for a show of cards this time, and ask my moderators and assistant moderators, can you count? I'm going to read the motion again. To change the operating budget amount from $89,120,265 to $85,620,265. If you're in favor of that amendment, please raise your cards and keep them up until the counters tell you you can place them down. Mr. Garrity will be counting the clerks and the supervisors of the checklist. You don't have to put your cards up till he comes in. Did Jim leave the room like Elvis? Is he gone? If he's gone, you can put your cards down. If you're in this room, he must have counted. For the mathematicians, I have a count of 12 and a count of 13, and then Jim's going to give us a count in favor of the motion. What's your total count, Jim? 39. So I need my mathematicians. 12, 13, 25, and 39. 64. 64 in favor. If you're 12 and 13, which I can add that up, that's 25. So, and then 39. So that's 60, 64. If you're opposed to the motion for a no vote, raise your cards and keep them up, please, until the assistant moderators count you, and Jim will go again to the rear with the supervisors and the clerks. Thank you. First count is 31. Second count is 46. And we're waiting for Mr. Garrity. He's running back. So I have 31, 46, and 39. 116. So yes, 64, no, 116. Motion fails. Thank you. We're back on the original motion, the original printed Article 2 with the operating budget 89, $120,265. Yes?
Point of information, what is the total enrolled students? What's the number in the school system?
Total enrolled?
Yeah, how many students are in the school system in
It's
total?
on the last, it is on your handout, the
I
last page.
saw it on the back page. Is it totaled up at the bottom?
3,296 students.
3,296.
That is as of October of last year.
Mr. LeBrecq.
Ryan LeBrecq, 174 Main Street. Now back to the original budget conversation. Just to address this gentleman's question earlier, he was confused about the lease bond, why it was a lease, not a bond. If you go back to December 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting, you'll see that they argue that, you know, if we call it a bond, it won't pass because it requires a 2/3 majority. So let's call it a lease so that it's a 50%, 50-50. And it did pass by the skin of its teeth. So they're correct. If they would have called it a bond, it would have failed. And that's the only reason they called it a lease. It had nothing to do with dollar savings. That was just their gamesmanship in trying to argue the reasoning for it.
The gentleman in the front, Mr. Peterson, is it? You had other questions, and I told you to hold them on the main motion. Do you have any more that you'd like to ask anyone?
Well, I guess I had a general question, and that was...
Can you speak into the mic so they can hear you?
I had a general question, and it related to, I lived for about 20 years in Wyndham, and I've lived in Danville now for about 22, 23 years. I'm one of these people that he was talking about. I'm on a fixed income, and my taxes from last year to this year went up 31%. It was like a huge hit, and like there's no relief. And I know I went back and I took a look at some of the numbers, and Wyndham is paying about $3,000 per student less than Timberlane Regional. I'd like to try to have an understanding as to why. I have a couple of other questions too, and they're kind of general, but I'd like to know what kind of budgeting models are being used in the various schools. And you know, I heard somebody over here talk about zero base. I know that's a model, a budgeting model, but there's lots of different budgeting models, and I was wondering what type of budgeting model is used, and is it consistent throughout all the schools?
Can anyone answer what kind of a budget model the budget committee uses? I don't know.
If this is off base, then I'll have a seat.
If you don't know and can't answer them, just say that.
Like Mrs. Sherman explained at the beginning of the presentation, she explained our budget process. We just start with a level budget, and any increases that are requested, they have to be presented, and they have to be approved by the budget committee. So that's the budget process that we have. Any increase that any director or principal is requesting for the budget, it has to be vetted by the budget committee. And
Who presents the budget? Is it like the principal from each school?
yeah, so we have the principal for each school, or any director that has any kind of budget. For example, the director of facilities has a facilities budget, and each of the 7 principals at our schools have each a budget.
So does the budget committee provide the various principals with the guidance on how to actually come up with a budget?
Well, yeah, we have guidance for the entire district of what is expected from each of them on how to prepare their budgets. We also review past year's expenditures and the trending on the expenses. And then each of the principals or directors, any request that they are doing in that particular year, they have to have a plan and an explanation why are they requesting those additional funds. And then they have to present the program or the plan or any new initiative that they have to the budget committee, and then it gets vetted at the budget committee.
I see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have the lady speak first? Thank you.
So we're speaking to the operator, sorry.
Your name again.
Diana True, 41 Hunt Pond Road, Sandown. So we're speaking to the current Article 2 again.
Correct.
So given that $89,120,265 is the operating budget for this year with contractual agreements, why is, if it defeats, our default budget should be the current year budget plus any contractual agreements? Why is that more? If we can live with 89,120,265, and that would include contractual arrangements for the year, why is the default budget larger?
Like I explained before, the default budget is just a formula. We take the prior year voted budget and we add any contractual agreements. The proposed budget has a process behind it where we take everything that is needed for the following year, any programs. Like I said, we look at the trend of expenditures as well, and we make decisions and projections based on that as well. So for example, there is a line for out of district tuition for special education. We look at the trending. We look at how many students we are projecting to have next year under those programs. And if there were 3 students that move out of district, that could be a $300,000 difference. So the proposed budget is a thoughtful process. It's a process where we take into consideration every single school and every single program. The default budget is just a number.
So the default budget should have just as much purpose and thoughtfulness as the regular budget?
It can't, it's just that it's
I mean,
regulated.
I've put together a default budget before, so I understand what that's all about. So that default budget being that high, so if the budget passes at 89,120,265, we're covering all our contractual arrangements for the year. So if it fails, you're getting extra money.
I have a new speaker behind you, Mr. Pelletier. I have two new speakers.
Ben Sharp, 1 Metacomet Lake Drive, Sandown, New Hampshire, SHARPE. I have a few points here. It seems like this never gets discussed at these meetings, and we're chasing funding at the school board and budget committee level at the schools. The state allocates about $2,600 per student in the state of New Hampshire. I believe there were some actions against this years ago, and the state is supposed to be paying somewhere in north of $5,000 to $6,000 per student. So if you just take that $3,000 per student right there, we're talking $9,600,000. If everybody's that interested in this kind of funding, you know, go talk to your state reps. There's also about a $200 to $300 million education surplus in the state of New Hampshire. I believe that's being encumbered. Maybe Mr. True can talk to that. That's $200 to $300 million that they say is a surplus. Who needs that money? It's right here in this room, and it's not getting spent on our students. All right? I believe the state has also decided not to take federal money to support education in New Hampshire. This is on the federal level, and the state is not accepting that kind of money for political reasons. I think that's unacceptable. There is also this talk of vouchers. This is public money that is going to be spent for private education. I have no wish to have my taxes put away into private hands for distribution. I am supportive of this article because I think the revenue that I just talked about can be taken from a different level. And if people don't want to stand up to their state reps and go to the voting booths in March, then we're going to play this game every single year without requesting more money from the state. Thanks.
Peter Terosian from Atkinson. I'm just going to...
Street address, please.
What's that?
Street address.
Okay, 18 Pine Knoll Drive. So I'm going to address the default budget because I'm on the municipal budget committee in my town, have been for 9 years. And we follow what the Department of Revenue Administration mandates in regard to setting default budgets. And we've never, at the municipal level, ever had a default budget higher than the operating budget. And quite frankly, we're having that conversation in Atkinson because there's a warrant to allow the selectmen to set the default budget. And I've argued that the problem we have is the school budget on a fairly regular basis is higher than the operating budget. And that's not the way it's supposed to be if you're following DRR. I think this process is outrageous. You know, the sky evidently is the limit for a lot of people in here. It isn't for me. And I just think that this process is out of control. And I think it's a sin what is happening here in this district, because we're paying way more money than we're getting for the product. You know, there's an inverse relationship. You can take a look at it, that the more schools spend, the lower the test scores. And I'm not suggesting it's because of the money, but I think we're concentrating all the money. We forgot what we're in business for, and that's to educate the students. But the number here is just an outrageous number. Thank you.
Seeing no one else, Mr. Pelletier.
Earlier, when I stated it was about $25,000 per student and you were shaking your heads, you were correct. It's about $27,000, $27,262 per student is the cost per student. So yes, I was wrong. It is higher. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Mike Luchet, 19 North Broadway, Atkinson, New Hampshire. You know, just like all of you, I'm a taxpayer here in this community. I felt the pain just like all of you, just like Mr. Sherwood described earlier. And I have to definitely agree with my good neighbor, Mr. Sharp. I mean, he explained it perfectly well. I mean, the real problem's at the state level. I mean, we start in a pie chart, very easy for everyone else to decipher. I mean, 85% of our funding locally is going to the schools. I mean, what is the state doing for us? I don't see a point in us really deliberating this any further. We've tried to cut it 2 different times. I would like us to call the question right now.
I had one speaker left at the podium, and I had this gentleman asked to respond. So I'm going to let this gentleman speak, and then Mr. LeBrecq, which will be our last speaker.
Thank you, and I will make this very, very brief. I'm not certain where you're getting your information from. I'm looking from the New Hampshire Department of Education, dated January 2nd, that the average per pupil of all expenditures, K through 12, is $24,755 for the state. Timberlane is $20,012. I'm getting this from the Department of Education from January, so that is where I'm deriving my information from. I'm not asking you anything, no.
Final speaker, Mr. LeBrecq.
I'm not positive, but I think he took the $89 million budget divided by the number of students, which seems like what the math would be. So I didn't do the calculations. I don't know if it's 27,000, but if anybody does that right now, what's 89,120,265 divided by 3,200 and whatever, 3,296 students. $27,000 per student. So it's called math. And unfortunately, you know, what's concerning to me most, and it's not just on the school level, it's on the town levels as well. You know, when you ask the question, what's the approach to budgeting, it seems like the first pass is throw it at the wall and see what sticks. Send them the biggest budget possible so that they have fat to cut out of it. And then in the end, everyone's happy up there because they're like, oh, we cut $2 million out of it. Well, if we started $7 million less and really sharpened pencils and said, what do we really need, instead of just throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks once it goes to the budget committee, that would be a much better approach to keeping the dollars down. And to address another gentleman, where's the money going to come from? Where does it come from individually? To some people, it comes from their dinner plate. But they may not have anything more to add to that dinner plate as a result. I'm not saying that I'm that way, and I'm thankful I'm not. But a lot of people, that's exactly what happens. So if individually we're able to find it, how come collectively the school department can't figure out a way to live within their means and stop bleeding the taxpayers dry year after year after year after year ad nauseum?
Article 2 will appear on the ballot as written. I'm moving on to Article 3. You don't want me to move on to Article 3? Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to restrict for reconsideration Article 2.
We have a motion duly made. Do we have a second? I have a number of seconds. Can the second repeat the name for our clerk?
Sue Sherman.
Sue Sherman. So we have a motion made and seconded to restrict reconsideration of Article 2. If you're in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. You can put them down. If you're opposed, raise your cards. I don't think I need the count from the rear room. I think the restriction passed. Thank you. Article 3, the 3-year collective bargaining agreement, Timberlane Teachers Association. Shall the voters of the school district approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Timberlane Teachers Association and the Timberlane Regional School Board, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Fiscal year 24-25 estimated increase, $2,427,107. Fiscal year 25-26 estimated increase, $1,799,324. Fiscal year 26-27 estimated increase, $1,949,771. The three-year total, $6,176,202. And further to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,427,107 for the 24-25 fiscal year. Such sum represents the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at the current staffing levels. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 7-0-2. Recommended by the budget committee, 9-0-0. Motion to put this on the ballot is written. Second. Motion made and seconded. Before we have a discussion on this by Mr. Sherwood, I call your attention again, as every year, this is a collective bargaining agreement. The cost items are discussable but not amendable. So, Mr. Sherwood, you want to speak on this?
Thank you very much. I'm now wishing I'd saved my breath from earlier. I'm in support of Article 3 for a couple reasons. I've had the privilege of being on the past two negotiating committees with the TTA. As many of you know, there have been several years of a great deal of uncertainty for our teachers, and therefore for our students. It's been many years since our teachers have had more than a singular year contract in which to feel stable. Right now, as a school district, we are faced with the challenge of hiring new teachers for vacant positions. And it's a challenge because our entry-level positions are, quite frankly, of the 15 districts that are close to us, there's only one district whose starting salary is less than ours. So you can imagine having a son or a daughter that's going to the educational field, and they're saying, hey, Mom and Dad, what do you think about Timberlane, or what do you think about Oyster River or Salem or Nashua, where their starting salary would be, $4,000 to $8,000 higher. For our experienced teachers, and that's about 50% of our teachers in the higher with more experience. Of these teachers, there is not a single district that pays less for the most seasoned teachers than Timberlane. Our teachers have been severely undercompensated for years. And we have seen the results of that, both in our inability to hire new teachers and attract new talent, but also for our most talented senior and experienced teachers, it's very hard not to take a job elsewhere for $6,000, $10,000, $15,000 more than they're currently able to get at Timberlane. And our teachers are facing a population where our policy allows them to have more children per classroom than the state average. Our teachers are facing a student population with a higher special education need than state average. Our teachers are doing this and reversing the trend, and we're recouping, if you believe test scores, faster than the state average, all the while costing less than average, state average, to educate our students. They are the MVPs. They're the ones who are in front of our children. This is our opportunity to put years and years and years of uncertainty for our children and for our teachers behind them. They deserve this contract. They compromised a lot during the negotiations, gave up several things such as the retirement incentive, which had been a bone of contention, because they recognized the need to strike a balance between trying to bridge the gap with their falling wages, not keeping up with inflation, and the dire straits that we are all in as taxpayers. There was a lot of give on both sides. This is the best deal for all the partners concerned. I'm in full support of this Article 3 TTA agreement.
Is there any more discussion on the article? Although it's not amendable, we can discuss it. Mr. LeBrecq.
So it was a very heartfelt speech. Appreciate that. If everyone up there felt so compassionate about this passing, then you would have made room in the budget for it to allow it to pass. I have no issue with people making money. I have to make more money to pay for all of this debacle. They have to make more money to pay for it too, because they're likely taxpayers in the district as well, for the most part. How many teachers does the $2.4 million represent?
Can we have a mic on the front, please?
368.
Is it straight line average increase, or does it vary based on years of service, et cetera?
Yes, they have a salary schedule that has different steps depending on experience.
Okay. Now, I'm not in the public environment, and I'm not a union guy. I don't have any stability in my work. I don't care to have any stability. It's, again, over the last 2 years, these salary increases should be prioritized over the other fat. And unfortunately, everybody up there wants everything. And so I think the fact that the budget decrease amendment didn't pass will be a detriment to this potentially passing. If anyone's doing math, which apparently we can't, because our average cost is $27,000 per year per student, based on math.
Yes, sir.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Louis Broad, B-R-O-A-D. I am the president of the Timberlane Teachers Association. This is a good contract. It was negotiated by a school board that desired to make a workable contract for all parties. It was overwhelmingly approved by our union. It balances the needs of the district with respect towards teachers. It recognizes substantial shifts that have happened in the demographics of school districts as well as professionals, educators. It responds to decades plus of diminished salary standings, as Mr. Sherwood had outlined. This will address the pressing problems of recruitment and retention. We ask that the voters support this and Article 4 on March 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Laurie Herschenroder, that's Herschenroder, 28 Partridge Lane, Plastow, New Hampshire. Good evening. I have lived in Plastow since 2004. My husband and I chose Plastow to raise our children. We are proud that they are Timberlane alumni who continue to excel at lives well lived. 2 out of 3 graduated with degrees from WPI in Worcester, and 1 more is there on his journey, almost halfway through. The appreciation, love, and respect we have for our Timberlane educators, our partners who wanted the best possible education, growth, and future for our children as much as we did, is simply immeasurable. Not only do I know what Timberlane educators did for my own children, but I know firsthand what they've done for oh so many more. I spent 13 years working alongside TTA staff as a paraeducator for Timberlane. When I say they are partners in helping students, that is an understatement. They put their all into helping each student succeed, no matter how big or small an accomplishment may be. I am an employee who did not return this school year. Our district is in a crisis, and that crisis is growing. Steps must be made to help retain and recruit Timberlane educators. Passing warrant Articles 3 and 4 is a step in the right direction. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you, Timberlane educators. You are the light for so many and champions helping to build and strengthen our beautiful future generations. I am here tonight to ask the public to join me in supporting TTA. Vote yes on 3 and 4. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Melissa Marr, 6 Lower Road, Plastow. I'm here tonight just to say that as a parent, if this does not pass, we will see our district fall apart before our eyes. The teachers are everything for the school, and I can only speak to the Plastow School, Pollard, because my kids are there. My son is in 4th grade. They've always had 4 classes. This year, they were condensed to 3 for teacher purposes. They're at capacity. It's caused a lot of problems in that school. They're moving into 5th grade, where currently there are no 5th grade teachers. They're long-term subs. Everybody's leaving. These 5th graders, I feel bad for because they are being taught by long-term subs. There's no requirement to have a teaching degree to be a long-term sub. Correct me if I'm wrong. And there may be some long-term subs that are teachers, and that's wonderful and lucky for those kids that do get those. But we have a class with no teachers and a overcapacity class coming in with no teachers. This is a huge problem. A lot of the teachers in one building don't feel heard or supported, and they're leaving. Some of them are leaving to go to other districts. Some of them are leaving to go to other schools within the district. And as a board, I would suggest that when you see a mass exodus from a building, you really have to start asking questions. Ask the hard questions. Ask those teachers. Go back to them, even if they don't have an exit interview. Why did you leave? When you see them all leaving one building, there's a problem in that building that needs to be resolved. If you're going to have a small group of people that everybody wants to leave because, again, that's a huge problem. Another problem is you've got contract employees that are getting paid hand over fist more than your salaried employees are paying. That's an insult to these staff members, the speech therapist, the OTs, the paras. How insulting is that you've got these people that are coming in making so much more, and these contract workers, they're not going to sign up to work in that building for less pay. And I got to be honest, one of my kids has a contract person, and I've not heard anything from them this year. The person that works for the school, emails, your kid's doing great, this, that. It's awesome. They love our kids, and they should get paid for that. They should get paid more than the contract people who have no kind of relationship with parents or children. And one of the other things that I saw that I thought was great was an idea to cut the subbing situation where we don't have enough subs. There was an idea that every administrator takes 2 days out of their month in subs for the district. That way, you're cutting down on the price you're paying for subbing, and your administration is involved in the classroom level. That could be a great idea for everything. Anyway, this has to pass. I'm not concerned about the environment in this room. I feel like it's going to pass in this room. My concern is when it's at the polls, and I hope that you all fight really hard to get this because I'm very, very, very concerned about this district. Thank you.
Good evening, Coral Hampy, 38 Boulder Drive, Danville. I would like to address my first speaking point, actually, to this gentleman. I just want to explain about when we go into a budget season and when our principals ask us, not a single employee of this district has a want. We only get needs. Maybe it's some paper, maybe it's whatever we need for our class, but nobody has a wish list, and we don't get wish lists. Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the TTA and the school board negotiation teams for their work at this collective agreement. I know how hard that is, so thank you, teams. Not everyone uses social media, so I would like to state into the record of this meeting the discrepancy in wages currently in this district. These wages are compared to 16 other districts in New Hampshire. I will state the Timberlane salary in the average of all of those. Bachelor's Step 1, this is your basic entry level. Timberlane is $39,900. The average is 44,600. Bachelor's top step, Timberlane has 61,000, and average is 70,000. For master's step 1, Timberlane has 44,400. The average is 49,300. And for a master's top step, Timberlane has 68,300. The average is 79,400. Over the last few years, we have lost many talented and engaging teachers solely due to low salary. Why stay if it's possible to earn $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 not far from here? To retain these valuable professionals as well as attract the best candidates, we need to bring Timberlane more in line. These kids are our future, and that affects everyone in our towns. So I leave you with this question. Who do you want to teach them? Just whoever we can get, or the best educators in the state? Thank you.
Mr. Pelletier?
Can I skip my address this time?
I think you can skip.
I can, okay, thank you. I'm going to speak against this, but before I get hit with boos and hisses, it's not because I don't think that teachers deserve or don't deserve this raise. I think it's due to the additional burden. And there was a comment earlier that said, I don't think it's gonna have an issue passing this room tonight, which I agree, but I do think that this room might have actually killed their raises by not amending the budget. Because there's gonna be a lot of people that don't wanna take on this extra burden. And you tonight that voted against, you voted against 6, you voted against 3, and now you're asking for an additional 6 million. So I won't be surprised when the residents say no. And it's sad. It's very sad because you probably deserve a raise, but I don't think we can continue to put that burden on us, and the inability to make concessions is what's going to kill this. So I'm against it, and I would urge other voters to vote against this, not because the teachers don't deserve it, just because there's a lot of us that can't handle this burden. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Myra Hogan, Westville Road, Plastow.
The number of the road, please.
You know, I have a real hard time giving my address out.
Everybody else is doing
I know. That doesn't mean that I can't say how I feel. 18. Anyway.
You can go to the clerk when you get done
I was going to do
speaking.
that. I actually have it written down. But I'm a retired middle school teacher. I taught health and phys ed. I taught in this district for 42 years. I retired in June. I first of all want to say thank you for speaking up for us. This is the first time in, I think, 3 contracts that the board has spoke up for the contract, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate, as a negotiator for many, many years in the district, that we finally had come together as a team and work this contract out. I think that people need to understand that when I left the district, it wasn't because I was done teaching. I love my kids, I love my job, but I had a really hard time with the fact that people in 2 districts over made $20,000 a year more than me at 10 years when I had 42 years in. Our pay scale is so ridiculously low that more than 30 teachers left last year to go to other schools or to retire. I did not need to retire, but I was done working to my bone. Let me just tell you the best part about retirement. I don't have to work on weekends. Now think about that. I sat many, many hours correcting papers, making lessons, doing projects on my weekends. I don't have to do that anymore. I never got paid for it. Most of these teachers go home, they throw together a meal for their families, and they sit down and they correct papers. They don't work 7.5 hours a day. They work 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. And weekends. They deserve this raise. I'm glad that it's finally happening, that we're finally on the same page. But I think that it's time that, yes, my taxes went up $2,000 a year this year. But my kids in my neighborhood are important. They're important to get the best teachers, and we're losing the best teachers. And who's going to come in on a salary $39,000 when they can go next door or in Haverhill or Andover and make twice as much? So we're not going to get the good teachers unless we start getting competitive. So I beg of you, I beg anybody who's watching TV, anybody who's here today, to please consider what education we are giving these kids and how unfair we are being if we're not going to give these teachers raises to get the best teachers. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Catherine Lindblad. I live at 11 Hilltop Road in Plastow. I would like to address some of the comments that I heard about our test scores. I am a new teacher. This is my second career. I've decided that I wanted to make an impact on this district. Sorry, I'm very nervous. I don't like speaking in front of people. I care so much about this district that I decided I wanted to come and work here and try to make it better. One thing I didn't understand as a parent or as a taxpayer previously is that our test scores, every student is counted, whether they take the test or not. So parents who opt their students out of testing, which I don't judge at all because I understand how stressful the test can be and how high anxiety the students can have, and I totally respect a parent's decision to do that. In addition, as was stated, we have a higher than average special education population, and I am not trying to blanket statement anything about the special education, but a lot of times it's those students who don't complete the testing as well. So our scores are being divided out by the total number of students that didn't even take the test as well. So it's really kind of an unfair way to judge a district. I also want to address why I support this, and I did not support either of the previous amendments. I'm a taxpayer. I also had a huge increase this year too. I don't know how we'll cover future increases. And I understand the need to try to pull back as much as possible. But as someone who works in the classrooms, I can tell you that one of the ways the district has tried to pull back is phasing out full computers, and we are now phasing in every staff member getting a Chromebook instead. I cannot do my job on a Chromebook. I use my personal computer at home to make homework assignments, to make my tests. I then have to save it as a PDF and email it to my work account. I then open my Chromebook at school, and half the time I can't even get the PDFs to show up. So I'm wasting my time at home, I'm wasting my planning time at school working with equipment that really doesn't do my job. You shouldn't have to use your own personal devices to do your job. We also have limited the number of printers that we have at school. We have, I think, maybe 5 printers that we get to use. We all are competing for these printers at the same time. Printers break, we know that. So anytime we can't print, the students suffer because we're not able to provide them with the materials that we intended to. I love working at the middle school so much. My colleagues are so passionate and care about the students. I can't tell you the number of times I've had conversations outside of school hours with my colleagues about how can we make things better for this student, or how can we lessen the anxiety for this student. We care so much about your students. Please do not punish the teachers because you're angry about the budget. It's not fair to us, it's not fair to your students. I have 3 students in this district right now. I have 2 that are, one's in high school, one's about to be in high school. They don't have that many years left. I'm not so worried about them. I have a 3rd grader who has many years ahead of her in this district. If we lose as many teachers as I fear we will, I looked today, I'm a math teacher. We have 2 high school math positions open. I looked quickly to see what was open in other districts around us. I mean, I have a list, I'm not gonna read it, but I have a list. There's open teacher positions in every district around us, including in Massachusetts, which pays a lot more. So you don't have to drive very far to get paid a lot more to work somewhere else, who is going to want to come here? I mean, it's like a logical decision to just go somewhere else, not that far away, to get paid a lot more. I really fear for the future of this district, and I want to continue being as passionate about it as I am. So I strongly support Article 3 and Article 4, and everyone at home, please, please support the teachers. Thank you.
Kathleen Blood, 155 Main Street, Atkinson. Capital B L-O-O-D. Rules matter. I was I was raised in this district. I graduated from this district, and I've been back here for a number of years. It is my third school district where I'm teaching. To those of you who only come to a couple of meetings a year, this is the most beautiful this is the most beautiful room in our district. My husband's not going to be happy about this. I don't need any more money. I need time. I need time enough to do a good job. In my department alone, we're down 3 positions. I sit in front of a 57-year-old aluminum window with a broken latch. The last big rainstorm that we had, a ceiling caved in a vacant classroom. The only reason that classroom was vacant is because there's no teacher there to teach there. I don't need more money, thank you. I need more time to do an excellent job for our kids. Please support Article 3 and 4. Thank you.
Seeing no one else at the mic, and since Article 3 is not amendable,
83 Royal Range Road, Sandown, New Hampshire. I have 3 children in the district. I also have knowledge of how many teachers are out there in the public and how many people are in the programs across the state. I believe UNH currently has 12 students in their teacher program. We are fighting for the teachers. We are fighting for the students. It is that simple. We need to be able to fill positions. I happen to also be a principal of one of the schools in the district. I can tell you that we have interviewed countless individuals, shown them the salary scale, and they have gotten up and walked away. This happened in June, July, and August. We are still trying to fill positions, and we know this is costly. It is also even more costly when a student doesn't have the resources in order to graduate. Dropouts cost society more than anything else, and we need to put people in positions to be resources. We need to give ELOs out there. We need to give opportunities where teachers can give time and energy that they so often do. The teachers are the blood that the students are going to nourish off of, that they are going to continue to fight for, and that they are going to be successful for. They're the entire key to my job. They're the entire key as to why I moved into this district 14 years ago. They're the entire key as why I came here 3 years ago to be a part of this district. We need to support the teachers for what is our future of our towns and our students. Thank you.
seeing no one else going to the mics, Article 3 will appear on the ballot as written, and as I mentioned, it wasn't amendable. Article 4 is also a non-amendable article, but authorization for special meeting on cost items. Shall the voters of the school district, if Article 3 is defeated, authorize the Timberlane Regional School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 3 cost items only. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 900. Motion to put it on the ballot is written. Second. And this article is required by law. I don't think we need to discuss it because it's a law in the legal language. It can't be amendable. Thank you. Moving on to Article. You had a question of order? Go ahead.
I have no reason to believe this 3 or 4 won't pass. But if 3 does not pass, what does it mean to address Article 3 cost items only? I've never, all these years, seen it, voted for it, but I never understood what it really meant. This year, I'm worried. What if Article 3 does not pass? What does that mean?
I'm going to let our district attorney, Mr. O'Shaughnessy, answer that question.
Yeah, district attorney. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. It means that the board would have the option of going back and meeting with the TTA and trying to reach an agreement on a different set of cost items. And if they reach an agreement, they could call a special meeting of this legislative body to vote on those cost items.
Just to be clear, that means you would have a special meeting, and anyone that attended that meeting would determine whether or not the contract would pass. Am I wrong? I just don't really understand.
Well, this meeting is conducted in 2 parts. It's a deliberative session and a voting session, and that special meeting to approve cost items would also be conducted in 2 parts. Yeah, there'd have to be a voting, ballot vote, official ballot vote on
Okay,
the cost items.
That was the part I didn't understand.
Yeah, so long story short, it's costly and complicated.
Thank you. Article 5, Capital Reserve Fund by Surplus. Shall the voters of the school district raise and appropriate up to $250,000 to be placed in the school building, construction, reconstruction, capital improvement, and land purchase capital reserve fund established in 1996, with such amounts to be transferred from those funds in the June 30, 2024 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, which were apportioned as capital expenses in 2023, 2024, in accordance with Article 6 of the Timberlane Regional School District Articles of Agreement. No amount to be raised by additional taxation. Majority vote required. Recommended by the school board 900. Recommended by the budget committee 900. Motion to put this on the ballot is written. Do I have a second? I have a motion made and seconded. Does anyone wish to speak on this article?
Ryan LeBrecq, 174 Main Street. So we obligated the taxpayers to $40 million over 20 years for capital improvements. I don't think it's necessary to shift another $250,000. The $250,000 should be used to offset the previous article and or the astronomical, ridiculous budget. Thank you.
See people moving, but they're not approaching the mic. Yes, at that end. Mr. Sapia.
Yes, to that point, yes, we did commit ourselves to the lease to do $25 million worth of work, but there's $130 million needed. There is no shortage of work that needs to be done. Buildings leak. There's all kinds of site work that needs to be done. There is, and the facilities director could tell you, there's an endless stream of work to be done. And the point behind this is, if we continue and, I know it sounds cliche, kick that can down the road, that money becomes worth less as inflation grabs a hold of it. So we can take care of what we can today, or we can wait 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and we'll get a lot less for that kind of money.
Thank you. Seeing nobody at the mic, Article 5 will appear on the ballot as written. Article 6, just our general report. Generally, to acceptance of reports. Shall the voters of the school district accept reports of agents, auditors, and the committees as written in the 2023 annual report? Majority vote required. Recommended by the school board 900. Motion to put it on the ballot is written. A second? I have a motion and seconded. don't believe we need to speak on this. I see nobody at the mic, so Article 6 will appear on the ballot as written. Article 7, Amendment to Administrators Union, CBA, to see if the school district will vote to approve the cost items included in the amendment to the previously approved 2023 to 2026 collective bargaining agreement between the Timberlane Regional School Board and Timberlane Administrators Unions, Teamsters Local Union Number 633, which calls for the following increases and decreases in salaries and benefits over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year at current staffing levels under the previously approved agreement. Fiscal year 24-25, estimated increase 60,000. Fiscal year 25-26, a decrease of 30,000. Two-year total, an increase of 30,000. No appropriations necessary in this article because the funding for these increases is part of the operating budget in Article 2. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 900. Motion to put this article on the ballot as written. And I have a second. And before I recognize the speaker at the mic, I have Mr. Krieger as our first speaker. Mr. Krieger.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a very simple explanation that we're looking to use these funds for professional development for the administrators. So in terms of college reimbursement, professional development, and courses, it's to increase their knowledge and understanding.
Yes.
Question has to do with the paragraph where no appropriation necessary of this article because the funding for these increases are part of the operating budget in Article 2. What happens if Article 2 fails? Is that part of the default budget as well?
Yes, it is. They always have that. Yes, it is. This is a benefit that the administrators have always had. They just passed their contract, the union contract last year, and the benefit was not included in the contract.
But if it's part of the default, because of a contractual obligation, why would you need to go through this process? I mean, I'm really finding that kind of a little bit confusing.
Could you ask that again?
If it's already in the default, if the operating budget does not pass, it's still covered in the default.
Correct, and this is a way for us to be transparent about where that appropriation would be going because it was not part of the collective bargaining agreement that was reached with the administrators. It was inadvertently left off. This is an MOU or an understanding that we are making an amendment to that agreement.
I just find this very confusing because of the way it's written. If it's going to happen no matter what, I understand that, but it's like why, I just find it confusing, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of illogical in some ways, but state law does require that cost items be approved by the legislative body. And because it's a negotiated cost item, even though it was already a benefit because it was negotiated, technically it needs to be presented now to you to be voted on.
Yes, ma'am.
Marion Springer, 160 Sandown Road, Danville. So if this doesn't pass, does this still happen? Do they still get these benefits?
I can answer that. So there's a law in New Hampshire that prohibits an expenditure if any purpose or appropriation is not approved by the legislative body. We often refer to that as no means no. So if the voters reject this, then that would be a prohibition against expending money for that purpose.
Okay, thanks.
Seeing no further discussion on Article 7, it will appear on the ballot as written. Article 8, another amendment to CBA for technology staff. To see if the school district will vote to approve the cost items included in the amendment to the previously approved 2023 to 2026 collective bargaining agreement between the Timberlane Regional School Board and Teamsters Local Union Number 633, administrative assistants, secretaries, and skilled maintenance employees, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year at current staffing levels under the previously approved agreement. Fiscal year 24-25 estimated increase, $28,471. 25-26 fiscal year estimated increase, $25,891, for a two-year total of $54,362. And further to raise and appropriate $28,471 for the 25 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the amendment to the 2023 to 2026 collective bargaining agreement over the costs that would be paid at current staffing levels under the previously approved agreement. Note, this article concerns the cost associated with the amendment to the previously approved 23 to 26 collective bargaining agreement, which was negotiated because the New Hampshire Public Employee Labor Relations Board added IT employees to this bargaining unit. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 900, recommended by the budget committee, 900. Motion to place this on the ballot is written. In a second. I have a motion and seconded, and I see that Shauna Manthorn will speak on this article. Shauna?
Thank you, Mr. Harb. Essentially, the New Hampshire Public Employee Relations Board added IT employees to this collective bargaining unit, so the warrant article is a result of the negotiations with those IT employees, and the CBA is via this amendment.
Thank you. No one at the mics, then Article 8 will appear on the ballot as written. Article 9, another special meeting article. Article 9, authorization for special meeting on cost items. Shall the voters of the school district, if Article 8 is defeated, authorize the Timberlane Regional School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 8 cost items only. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 900. Another motion to place this on the ballot is written. And I have a second. I have a motion and seconded. Again, this is language required by law. We explained the last one, so I'm going to move on the warrant. Article 10, tax impact statement by petition. To see if the Timberlane Regional School District will vote to accept RSA 32:5, which will allow the inclusion of the estimated tax impact per town as part of the warrant article and to be included on the ballot. Majority vote required. Do I have a motion to place this on the ballot as written? Ms. Whitten, she's not at the mic, but put her down. Okay. Do we have a second? We have a second here by our vice chair. Would you like to speak on your motion?
Last year, voters approved increasing the 22-23 budget of $76,058,328 to our current 23-24 budget of $87,046,915. That's an additional $10,978,587 increase. It seemed that many did not realize the impact of what that large jump would have on their taxes until they received their bill in November. With all the complaining and concern expressed, a common question was asked. Why were we not given that information on the ballot? Danville and Sandown ballots include tax impact as part of all money warrant articles in 2020. In 2020, Danville passed warrant article 2023-20 to allow the inclusion of the estimated tax impact as part of the warrant article and to be included on the ballot. Sandow took similar steps. And I quote, "The tax impact noted in the various articles is the selectmen's best estimate based on the town's 2023 valuation as defined by the MS-1 line 21, end quote. This explanation is part of the town's warrant article's summary sheet. For the school to do a similar practice, they would have to break down tax impact per town since we do not share the same valuations. The Budget Committee, School Board, and Administration are on record wanting all stakeholders to be more involved and better informed on the school district needs, the budget, and how it's spent. I'm sure when the numbers are being calculated and crunched, tax impact are part of those equations, and ultimately the tax rate and total bills sent to each town. Sharing this type of specific information per warrant article as it appears on the ballot will provide critical cost information to inform voters better.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else to speak on this? Mr. LeBrecq.
And LeBrecq, 174 Main Street. I think this is a breath of fresh air. I think many people have no idea what they're voting for and how it's going to affect themselves dollar-wise. And I think that from a fairness perspective, if people saw the cost of what they're voting for, we'd have a different outcome in a lot of cases. Tonight, what's on here is probably $1,000 a year for a modest home, more for a larger home. It's unfortunate that that's the case yet again this year.
Anyone else to speak on this warrant article? Seeing none and nobody at the yes, sir.
Just a point of information, earlier in the evening there actually was shown, and you can pick this up at the back, the tax implication per 1,000 with and without warrant articles.
So seeing nobody at the mic, that article will appear on the ballot as written. And don't forget to vote March 12th, 2024. And after this meeting, which I'm about to adjourn, the Timberlane Regional School Board and the Regional Budget Committee will meet separately following this session to finalize any recommendation action for the official ballot. So I hope you all go out and vote March 12th. I look forward to seeing the Plastow residents in Plastow. I deem this meeting adjourned. Thank you.